Survivor's ready. Go!
Travis spoken.
Boston Rob and Amber are gonna do it.
This is a business trip, as I like to say.
You Brad Culpepper.
I'm tired of you and the fucking chicken.
You can call me the puppet master. They can be my little puppets.
It's not like you're making me deal with the devil here. You get to milk your own milk, I guess.
We got enough rocks here, too. We could build a pretty decent shelter just using rocks.
I'm supposed to talk loud.
Direct from Hobart, it's time for the only Survivor podcast in Australia dedicated to Survivor. Bring you today's interviews, episodes, and opinions from the greatest reality show on the planet. It's Survivor Oz, and here's your host.
Okay, welcome everybody to Survivor Oz. It's Australia's own one and only Survivor podcast, but it is a bit of a United Nations at the moment, and we're being led by a Kiwi. Finally, there's a Kiwi takeover of Survivor Oz. It's taken a long time, but it's not Survivor Oz, it's Survivor NZ this time. I'm Nick Chester, and I am your host all the way from here in the Waikato, New Zealand. And I'm joined by three other Ozlets to talk about this explosive episode of Survivor. So I'm joined by Alec, who's all the way from Utah. Say hi, Alec.
What's up?
I've got Jordan from New York. How you going, Jordan?
Hey, Nick. Good to talk to you for the first time.
Yeah, I was just thinking, have we actually talked before in a podcast? And you've just answered that question. So there you go. And Cable, who's all the way from Melbourne. So we did have to have at least one Aussie on the panel. So how you going, Cable?
I'm very good. Very, very good, and excited to talk about this episode. And look, I'm just going to put it out there right now. I think this season so far, after 4 episodes, has been awesome. And I think sometimes a good gauge of we as fans, we have our own biases towards the different seasons, but I think when you watch the show with your partner who's not a massive or a super fan, if they're having a big emotional reaction to the episodes, I think that can mean, can be a good thing. So I think my partner's had a good laugh at Tai Trang. She loves Tai Trang. The kind of bullying with Alicia and stuff like that. So she's had a really, really good response to this season. So the fact that she's really into it and vents a lot to me about it as well. It says that it's a good cast and a really good season. So I'm rapt to even just keep talking about it.
Yeah, well, and you bring up a really good point, because I think what this episode especially is really good at is it is one you can show to somebody who's not a fan, and they'll be interested in that first half of watching the reality of reality TV really happening in that scene. So I think you make a really, really good point there. So, Jordan, what were your overall thoughts? It's a bit of a hard one given that we've almost got 2 mini episodes in one, really, but what are your thoughts on the episode overall?
I think I heard someone inside the show, maybe Jeff, I heard that he said it was the most dramatic episode ever. I don't think anything can top Mike Scoopin in season 2, and for me, the second most is Russell Swan's medevac in Samoa. This one is probably third. It's really good. It was really dramatic. It's not the most dramatic episode of all time, but it was very entertaining. And yeah, it was like really divided into 2 acts with an intermission or maybe 3 acts, but you had the challenge, and then you had the bronze camp, and then you had the conclusion with the immunity challenge and the tribal council. So overall, it was kind of like 2 different episodes. One where you just have the drama at the challenge, and the other where you just have the regular Survivor game going on. I really liked it.
Yeah, and you bring up some really interesting points. It is just such a different episode of Survivor for so many different reasons. Not just the medical situation, which, is unprecedented, but you also got one of the most blatantly obvious eliminations ever on Survivor, and how they dealt with that was also some really interesting TV to watch. So, Alec, what were your thoughts on the episode?
My thoughts, when like the episode recap comes up, I said this is easily one of the top 25 episodes of Survivor. Maybe even like top 15 or so. Just for the fact of, just for the first half. Like second half, I loved how they edited it. Like, I thought it was one of the best edited episodes they've had in a long time. Just the fact there was no swerves. They went straight from immunity to tribal council because nothing was going to change. It's one of those where it's like an obvious boot episode that was still really, really exciting throughout. Like, even to tribal council, even though you knew who was going home. So I thought it was definitely one of the top 25 episodes ever of Survivor. So.
Wow, well, that's a big call coming out of the gate, and I think one of the things that Cable you mentioned, and I think just coming back to that point about the season and where it's going, and I think for me you make some really interesting points that we were kind of undersold on this season going into it, that it was going to be really brutal, and it was going to be we'd never really seen it this harsh ever before, and that was really interesting to talk about. But I think we've actually been undersold on these characters and how interesting they are and how real this all feels. And every episode I'm finding quite difficult because we're always losing an interesting character, and that's got to be good going forwards, I think. But that's a really interesting thing to think about. So I think we might just try and break this down into two sections, really, because I think we do need to talk about that medical situation a little bit. Because it is a little bit unprecedented, and Jordan, you've already talked about where it kind of ranks with the other ones, and I think this one is a little bit different in that we've had like Mike Scoopin, but that kind of happened at camp, and then everybody rushed into camp. We've had the Russell Swan that happens at the challenge, and this is similar, but with 3 people going down, it really is different. And to me, the other thing I really picked up about it was that you got to see all the camera crew, everybody just drop, and you got to see behind the curtain a little bit as to how the show's made. So I might just ask, I'll start with Alec actually. I mean, what was your kind of initial gut reaction to watching that all unfold?
I thought it was super emotional. The first like medical emergency was kind of, they already finished and stuff, but then like while they're attending to one, another one comes, and then another one happens while they're attending to the second one. And out of the 3 people, the one that you least expect to be medically evac is the one who gets medically evac. And so I thought it was definitely one of the most dramatic moments of Survivor. Other than, I would probably say Russell Swan and Michaels were dramatic moments, but this like lasted twice as long, and so that's why I would say it's probably one. Like, even though it's heat exhaustion, which is no joke, like heat stroke and stuff like that, but it's like not the most medically emergent. It's not getting your skin burned off or like basically almost dying and stuff, but like just the fact that 3 people just back to back, like while they're attending one, another one goes down. While they're attending the second one, another one goes down, and just made it. It's drama piled on drama that made it amazing. So
yeah, absolutely crazy. Hey, now I know, Cable, you're going to have a lot to say about this, given that your name is an anagram for Caleb. So I'll let you go for it.
Well, I get called Caleb a fair bit too.
Yeah, I imagine.
Just to go back to what Jordan was saying earlier, even I don't want to go back too far, but Jeff did talk about how this is the most dramatic episode, and I think I agree with Jordan. Jordan sort of said, Scoopin and Russell Swan were probably more dramatic. But I think in the context of Jeff Probst's position, being at the challenge and everything happening at that time, I think for him it was probably, in a context, it was more dramatic for him, not necessarily for the viewer. I think, obviously Jeff wasn't there when and Mike fell into the fire, and then he was there obviously at the challenge when Russ Swan. But I think to be in a situation where you're trying to be the host and the executive producer of a TV show, and you're watching some person need medical assistance while you're trying to commentate or oversee a challenge, and then another 2 people go down, and drawing all these people in and getting all the crew yelling for water and all that stuff that he went through, and you can see the stress on his face. Like he held it together pretty well, Jeff, and I give him. I'd love to shake his hand and congratulate him, because I think he did a brilliant job at keeping his cool. But you can sort of see, if you really re-watch it, you can definitely see a little bit of, panic sort of, just underlying in there. And so for him, I think it was the most dramatic episode he's ever probably done. But to go back to what Jordan was saying, I think, it's probably the most dramatic situation Survivor's probably ever dealt with. But I mean, as an episode, it's probably not the most dramatic, if you get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, totally. Hey, Jordan, I mean, what were your thoughts around actually kind of seeing the curtain pulled back and seeing that situation unfold, and you get to see how many people are actually at a challenge with cameras and boom mics and the medical team and everything that they do, that they're all just sitting there just offside camera, and what were your takes on that?
I think they really needed to do that because they just needed to show the enormity of the situation where you have the three people down at the same time. After Debbie was recovered, they just, I guess Peter on their tribe, who's the doctor, was just kind of overseeing that, I hope, anyway, because they didn't really cut to him. So hopefully he was taking care of it. But
well, just to pause you there for a minute, Jordan, it's that, just to fill in a little bit, because I think a lot of people had that question about why he's kind of standing on the side, not doing anything, and he's kind of said on Twitter that he wasn't allowed to, that for liability reasons he actually wasn't really allowed to help. You're not really supposed to interact with the other tribe, and because that was a really weird thing to me as well. So it's still a bit strange. You would think in a life and death situation you'd kind of forget about that stuff, but anyway, that was kind of his reasoning. So sorry, I'll let you go.
Oh, that's fine. And then I really think they needed to show what was happening, because you have three people down, and all three of these people, they don't have any body fat, really. They're like, well, Debbie has, she's really slender and has very little body fat, and Caleb's all muscular, and Sydney's a bodybuilder, so they all need medical attention, and they have no energy other than they have no stored energy, so their muscles are breaking down. And they really needed to show what was happening and how many people really needed to attend to this situation where, they're using all their medical equipment on Caleb, and now they need to find some way to deal with Sydney, and just using every person that was available that didn't need to be filming, or just I guess just be filming or getting audio. I think they absolutely did the right thing. It was really fascinating to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. It was just one of a kind. I'd like to think that we'll never kind of see anything quite that crazy again, but you never know, I suppose. So I think, just to fill in a little bit about what happened to Caleb after the show, that apparently he was obviously airlifted out, got put onto an ambulance, and he was sent off to a local hospital where he was there for, I believe it was 5.5 days, and basically it sounds like all the moisture from his muscles more or less was gone, and he needed a lot of time to recover. He was saying that because he's quite a built guy and all that kind of thing, that really helped him to kind of get through that, but it also meant that his recovery took a little bit longer. So that's, if you haven't read anything from Caleb since the episode aired, I encourage you to go and do that, because it fills in a little bit of the story behind the scenes. But I mean, we kind of get that screen at the end that says that he's 100% recovered and wants to play again. He must be absolutely crazy, but that's his call. And then it's good that. Sorry,
can I just add one more thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, and I think the conditions of just 11 days of, or well, I guess it was day 9 at that point, but like they had very little water, and it was 110, 20 degrees out there, and very little food. I'm not surprised that those three people in particular went down. I'm not surprised that any three people did go down in the end. So that situation.
It's really so it's interesting to me, and I think one of the things that you kind of don't see through the TV is the humidity, and living somewhere where there is a lot of humidity, you do feel that, and it's a weird thing to kind of describe, and obviously you can't really see it on TV, and obviously it was nowhere near as bad here as it is in Cambodia, but that level of humidity means that you're never really comfortable. Even when the sun goes down, you still feel that heat, and these guys would have had to have been drinking water constantly just to stay hydrated and stay, alert, never mind competing in a challenge. So that kind of brings me home.
Yeah, they were doing that challenge for like an hour. Right?
Yeah, that's right, and that kind of that kind of quite neatly brings me to my next question, which was this irresponsible? There's been a bit of talk. Did Survivor, make a mistake with this challenge should they have been subjecting these guys to this. And Cable, I might go to you. What are your takes on that?
Yeah, look, I haven't totally trawled all of social media, but I've been getting a vibe off people that, through the different Facebook Survivor groups and Twitter and that a lot of people are a bit more upset with production and Jeff Probst and why the challenge was so hard and, getting to that 45-minute mark where they're not finding the bag of balls and all that sort of stuff. At a potential, not that those people are there, but people are talking about it was sort of the peak hot time of Cambodia and they're out in the sun. And even Jeff in his commentary in the challenge, the sand's really hot, blah, blah, blah. I think people are more critical of Survivor putting the players through that. Look, it is interesting. I was surprised how long it took them to find the bag of balls. I don't know how deep they were, but you sort of think they would have been, okay, there was a big space for them to dig, but you would have thought maybe all three bags should have been fairly, close to the surface. It's just about digging in the right spots. But it is interesting. I think the argument could be made that the players didn't hydrate themselves enough before the challenge. Look, they've only got X amount of water and they've got to boil it, but maybe that's about preparation. They surely know roughly when they go into a challenge they should be trying to hydrate themselves as best as possible. So, yeah, well, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll go to you in a minute, Alec, but I think one thing for me that was quite interesting was that this challenge, it looks to me like it happened in the middle of the day, which I think is quite interesting. And I do wonder if the impact we'll see going forwards is that, and we saw it a little bit on Cambodia, which was obviously shot after the season, that a lot of the challenges seem to be filmed either, early in the morning or late at night. And I wonder if we'll start to see a few more challenges that are filmed, at the extremes of the day as opposed to in the middle of the day. I don't know. We've seen challenges like this before. This challenge didn't strike me as being particularly grueling. And maybe just the placement of those balls in that sandpit was just unfortunate. I mean, it was obviously run by the Dream Team beforehand, so it does just seem a little bit of an unusual situation as opposed to anything else. It doesn't seem like there was anything that stuck out to me as being particularly weird, but it's hard to know when you're seeing the edited version. But Alec, what were your thoughts around that?
I don't think it's the challenge at all. I don't think it's production's fault at all. One of the main things that I've realized is 9 days in, they haven't had like a single day of rain. And like when that tends to happen, the days just get warmer and warmer. And like surprisingly, the days get more humid. And and humid hot, as you know, is very different than dry hot. I live in dry hot. I lived in humid hot for 2 years. And, I feel that it was just because of the days and days of dehydration. They could constantly be boiling water, but with 6 people on a tribe, you can't boil enough water to be able to fully hydrate some people, especially big beefcakes like Caleb and even like smaller ones like Debbie, who still need just as much water as someone stronger, And it's just like, I don't think it was challenge thing at all. I think it was just the overall thing. Like, this is where Survivor gets real, because you don't, like, all we see is the strategizing, the challenges, and voting out and stuff. It's like, this season they've shown a lot more of, like, camp life and, like, shown how tough this season is just living at camp, There was the whole story of Debbie and Liz with fighting over the water and stuff like that. And, there's even Jen with the bug area. Like, just these little, like, real-life stories that have come out just of the survival aspect. They've gone 9 days without any rain at all, which tends to cool them down, and like they can just stand out in the rain and get hydrated a little bit more that way. And it's just like they haven't had that. Yeah, and Aubrey too.
Yeah, no, it's certainly been pretty intense, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens this season. I mean, we've obviously been teased that this probably isn't the last we're going to see of this kind of craziness, so it's going to be really interesting to see how this goes forwards. But I think we've probably talked this through pretty well. It's, I think the only thing left to do is really talk about, Caleb and what we think about him going forwards. I suppose one thing I do need to say, which we probably haven't, is, just a round of applause for our medic team out there. They did an incredible job, and, Dr. Joe deserves all the plaudits he's been getting this week because he's, just an amazing guy out there, and they all do a fantastic job. So, yeah, I mean, well done to all of them for handling that situation. But, if we think about Caleb, what he's gone through, it's incredible to me that he would ever want to come and play this game again. I mean, I watched this episode in two minds about whether or not I would apply for New Zealand Survivor, and after watching this, I've decided I'm not going to, because it seems like a crazy thing to do. So the fact that he would want to come and play again kind of speaks to his competitive nature, and he laid everything on the line. I've got to give him a huge amount of credit for that, and I think you could pretty much chalk him in for any season he wants to come back and play. They'll have him back. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes next for him, because just really sad way for him to go out of the game, but at the same time, you can't fault that effort. Pretty amazing. So, Jordan, what are your kind of final takeaways about Caleb before we move on?
Yeah, I think I heard on the exit interview too that he was, that the friendship with Ty was a real friendship. And yeah, he was portrayed as a hero. Coming off of Big Brother 16, he was like a goofy character who was really creepy at the beginning, but then he was funny towards the end of the season. But on Survivor, he was portrayed as just a heroic, gets along with everybody, and a loyal guy. And yeah, he's definitely he's one of your first choices to return in a future season, just because the way he went out and how he looked before he did.
Yeah, let's not hype it. Let's hope it doesn't take 23 seasons to get him back like it did with Scoopin.
Yeah.
I think there'll be a pretty quick turnaround if he wants to come back and play. They'll just need to find the right season for him. But I think we'll definitely see Caleb back as long as he wants to do it. Cable, what are your final thoughts about your almost namesake?
No, I actually agree with you. I'm surprised in a lot of ways. Like, if you do listen to exit interviews, not that I should be really plugging anyone else, but if you're going to listen to an exit interview, go to Rob Has a Podcast and listen to him. Caleb really goes into depth of even just his recuperation. It wasn't just 5.5 or 6 days in hospital. It was also just getting back to real life and really getting his body right, and him talking about even with sunglasses on, he was struggling in sort of sunlight and all that sort of stuff. And you sort of think, I agree with you. It's like, why the hell would you want to go back and do that again? It wasn't like he got to 33 days and collapsed. It was like, what was it, 9 or 10 days? I mean, he just pushed his body to the limits, and it's one of those things. I think he'll probably be asked back, but I'm in the process of writing an article for the website as well. So, in regards to returnee seasons, I'm no longer a fan of those. I think you just got to have full all-star seasons, and whether he comes back for one of those is I guess the question. Caleb's look, I didn't know his previous history in Big Brother apart from little tidbits I'd picked up on the internet, but and had a bit of an argument with Kristen about it a couple of weeks ago on a podcast. I don't know his douchebag status before Survivor, but I thought he was a great Survivor character. I think he was playing it well, and he was getting a hero edit. So why wouldn't you bring him back? And I think even Jeff Probst, I don't know how much you guys have listened to Jeff, but originally I think when he was told he was getting Caleb, when CBS sort of threw that at Jeff wasn't a big fan of that idea, and Jeff's apparently not a big Big Brother viewer or doesn't really keep up to date with that sort of stuff. But he, after the season, said he was glad they had Caleb, and he couldn't speak highly enough of him. So, I mean, that says a lot. If Jeff Probst is not a fan of you necessarily, and then you change his, play the game and change his perception of you, then that's a good thing, I guess, as well. So you could probably see him coming back.
So go ahead. I've got kind of one follow-up question here, which is also that, do you think it's better to kind of go out of the game kind of day 9 with so many potential options going forwards, or do you think it's worse going out in an Eric Reichenbach type of spot where it's day 36, you're so close to the end, and you go out that way? What's kind of your views on that, and final thoughts on Caleb as well?
I would definitely say I'd rather go out like day 9, just knowing like the advantage of going out like day 35 or 36, whenever when Eric went out, is like you gave it your all and you lasted 36 days, whereas like Caleb might be thinking, oh, I gave it my all and I only lasted 9 days. How am I going to last 39? But my final thoughts with Caleb, like yes, he was kind of did get like a douchebaggy edit and stuff like that on Big Brother. He was kind of creepy towards the beginning, and he turned into not the greatest player, but he was like that dark horse to win Big Brother. Like, when it came like final 6, you're just like, oh, like there's this, and this, and like, Frankie can win, like Derek could win. But if Derek's not in the end, oh, Caleb might win, and he's just like that person that it's just like, he's likable enough now that it's just like, he could win. And Survivor, he was definitely playing that card. Like he learned from his mistakes on Big Brother, and he knew how to play the social game a lot better than he did originally. It's like he didn't fall in love with any of the girls on his tribe, which is a plus. Even he was on the beauty tribe too. Like all 3 of them are gorgeous, so it's like he could have easily fell into that trap again, but he didn't. I mean, he fell in love with the gay guy on the tribe. Like obviously he learned from his mistakes, but he definitely was getting more of a hero edit. I feel that the edit also helped it to where his medical evacuation made it more emotional. Especially when you saw like Ty, Anna, and Julia just like crying about him being the one medically evacuated. Like shows how good of a game he was playing. He like everybody loved him. He was giving it his all in every challenge. And if you saw Caleb on Big Brother, like seeing him on Survivor, and like the fact that he wants to go out and play again, despite how hard it was for him the first time, it's basically how Caleb is. Like if you saw him on Big Brother, that's how he was. If he didn't win a challenge, he always was upset at himself because he didn't feel like he gave it 100%. So it's like, yeah. I enjoyed Caleb.
Yeah, and I think probably one of the things is that we've seen him grow a little bit from who he was on Big Brother. It's not something I saw, but I've obviously heard a lot about it. And, now he's, he had a girlfriend when he went out to film, and he's now engaged. So, he has grown up a little bit and become a bit of a different person. And I think that probably shows a little bit to people that have seen both of those seasons. So, I mean, yeah, it's a terrible way to go out of the game. But if you're going to go out with a bang, my God, that is one way to go out. Look, I think we've probably covered off the whole medical evacuation thing quite well here. I mean, that whole scene was just absolutely insane. I think some of the other things that I picked up on was, kind of Jason and how he's kind of holding on to Sydney and being that real good support person while he's got these huge bandages on his on his sunburnt shoulders by the looks of it as well. So, he's in the wars as well. I think just everybody kind of the game stopped, and you really see that, everything just kind of stops. And you get these wide shots with all the camera crew and everything. It's just incredible TV. I'm glad we don't see it too often because that wouldn't be a good way to watch Survivor, but it is absolutely fascinating. I'm glad everybody's okay. And, I think we can move on from that. Okay. So if everybody's happy, I think we'll move into the second portion of the show, which was a very cut and dry elimination of somebody that's kind of been on the chopping block for a few weeks. But I still think there's some interesting stuff to unpack there. And I think first let's talk about this immunity challenge, which was kind of a bit of an old school throwback kind of a challenge where they're running into the jungle to get bits of a puzzle piece, a kind of rope puzzle piece, which was weird. And also getting some other pieces from out in the water, bringing that back and putting them together. And we once again saw the value of kind of Pete and Aubrey, who are pretty awesome in these types of challenges. And also those two beauty girls who seem to do with the puzzles all the time do an awesome job there. And once again, it was the Brawn tribe failing to finish that puzzle. And yes, a couple of interesting points there. I think I'll go around and ask each of you what you thought of the challenge itself. But I've also got another point that I'm interested in getting your guys' take on is, do you think the Brawn tribe maybe threw that challenge? Because it certainly looked like Jason and Scott were not keen to step in and take over with the puzzle. They were probably quite happy that if they lost, they knew it was going to happen and get rid of somebody that was only going to cause them problems in the future. So, from each of you, I'll just go around and get a bit of a take on what you think about that. Cable, I'll start with you. What did you think of the challenge? Do you think that there was any desire to throw that challenge from the Brawn tribe?
I think it was a bit like the season before it, where Bion didn't really necessarily want to lose, but they didn't care if they did because they were going to vote out Monica. Absolutely, I think Brawn, and I think it's come out in subsequent days in social media that they weren't giving it their absolute all because, the argument that pretty much Alicia probably dug her grave a little bit as well. It was a little bit of her own fault saying, I hope there's a switch because, I'm going to do this, this and this. And, with her information of knowing Jason had an idol and the fact that she could just be an extra number and flip on them, I think they just thought, you know what, we're going to have to... We'll try, but not really give it our 100% because I think Jason and Scott, they might not have been... Look, it's hard. Like, again, going back even to the challenge before, obviously we've had, 3 people go down medically. They're hard conditions. We don't know how tired these guys are, especially if they're big guys that, require X amount of calories per day normally and protein and all that sort of stuff and hydration. But I don't think Scott and Jason look like they were swimming too hard. And even coming up the beach, we saw Nick just charge up the beach, and then you see sort of Scott and Jason sort of dawdle up and not really give it their all. And also not switching out in the puzzle. I think they just wanted Alicia gone 100%, so they weren't too phased with losing, which still I think is fairly stupid. But it is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, it's interesting, and a friend of the podcast, I think she is, Eliza, who's always very vocal on social media about you should never ever throw a challenge. I simply don't agree with that. I think there are times when it makes sense, and if we'd come into a swap with, if those 3 Brawn guys had come into a swap and had Alicia there, she was only going to cause them problems. She's not going to work with them, and that's their own fault, to be fair. But she's not going to work with them. It makes just as much sense to get rid of her while you've got the opportunity.
And especially, at the end of the day, she's got the information to say Jason has an idol, so that can ruin his whole game. So in his best interest, getting rid of her and just having that, keeping his idol secret at least, is, absolutely, you'd put her on the chopping block.
Yeah. Jordan, what did you make of the challenge and the Brawn's actions during that?
I like the challenge. A race and puzzle pieces. I don't think the puzzle was relatively simple. I think so. It was more of an emphasis on just go as fast as you can, and then you could with an average puzzle team, you'll do a good job. And then with the bronze. Yeah, I think they were just happy. I agree with Cable. I think they were just happy to, let the chips fall. Let Alicia do the puzzle. If she can save herself, good for her. But she's probably not, and we'll get rid of her. So, yeah, maybe just to save some energy too. But, yeah, I would. That's probably what I would have done if I was, Scott or Jason. Just, let the challenge happen, and if you lose, then it's not too bad.
Yeah. No, I kind of agree with you there. I think, Alec, what was your take on the whole thing?
The challenge I thought was really good, especially compared to the other challenge, which was like super overcomplicated, like really good challenge. And then this one was the very simple one: 2 race to the jungle, 2 race out into the water, do a puzzle. Like, I feel like the challenges, especially after what happened at that reward challenge, will be a little bit simpler, I guess you could say, like not as much digging and stuff in the dirt. As far as the Brawn tribe, I don't feel they threw it, but I feel like they just, like Jordan was saying, Scott and Jason were just like, let the chips fall where they may, like, it's not the end of the world if we lose this challenge because we're getting rid of somebody who could ruin our game later on. or we can win this challenge and maybe be able to work. Because I feel Sydney had enough grasp on Alicia that, like, if a swap were to happen, she might be able to control Alicia. But Alicia also has a big mouth too that could ruin, could ruin Jason and Scott's game. And so them not switching out at the puzzle, I'm pretty sure was just like, hey, you got to save yourself kind of thing. It's like they were already in last place. They were falling farther behind on the puzzle. And it's like them jumping in probably wouldn't have made much of a difference at that point. And so it's just like, and there was the big old fight about Scott telling Alicia to be a cheerleader and stuff like that. And I feel this was them saying, okay, go prove yourself if you're going to like act like this, you know? And so it's just like, I don't feel that like they threw it, but they weren't saying it's a must-win challenge. Like they was kind of saying like, it's not one that we don't care if we win or lose. Like it's a win-win kind of either way.
Yeah. It was, I agree with what all you guys are saying. That challenge was kind of weird to me because it was one of those ones I couldn't really make out how hard that puzzle really was just from kind of, looking at it on TV. That's kind of one I'd quite like to give a go just to see how. I normally don't want to do puzzles because I just screw them up. But I think that one would be quite interesting to do. Just, have a bit of a go at it. And you don't have to move big, massive puzzle blocks around either, so that makes it even better in my opinion. So I think it was, a really interesting finish to that challenge. Obviously, the Brawn Tribe lose, and we get this really bizarre situation where, the two guys are talking about, should we just do Tribal Council now? Everybody knows who's going. Just a really weird scenario. And then we go straight from the challenge, kind of smash cut into Tribal Council. So there's absolutely there's no doubt about what's going to happen from that point onward. So the whole situation was quite weird to me. I'm gonna open the floor over to Cable because I know he's got a lot to say about his girl Alicia, so I'm gonna let him do that. But one of the things I'm quite interested in talking about is there's a couple of things I want to talk about here. But the first thing I really got is is there anything you think she could have done? Is there absolutely no chance? Don't even bother to show us that stuff because we know it's not going to happen. Or do you think there is something she could have done? So you go ahead, Cable. You gush over your girl and answer that question along the way if you get a chance.
No, look, to be honest, I think she tried as much. We didn't see it, but I think going on her exit interviews, she tried to work with Sydney and was hoping there was another idol or some other way. But I think her time was up and there was not much she could do. We'll speak to the other guys about the way she was treated, whether that was really all her fault or not. But just speaking to her, online and stuff, I think she was still... Hold
on. Stop there. Talking to her online?
Yeah.
Oh, you stalker.
No stalking.
Anyway, just an aside, off you go.
Yeah. Just a little bit of back and forth. And did you know she used to live in Australia? I bet you didn't know that.
I think you did mention that to me. Yeah, I think she's been to New Zealand as well, actually.
Yeah, she used to live in Sydney, and she came to Melbourne to come to the aquarium and swim with the sharks and stuff. So she's an adrenaline junkie. But just talking to her online, it's funny how even this episode's really blown up on social media. I know Jason and Scott have got a lot of hate from it because I know I've seen a bit of Jason's stuff and people supporting him and block out all the haters, this and that. But then Alicia's copped a lot of hate in the last few weeks as well, and people think she's just a dumb ditzy blonde. And look, she might not be the sharpest tool in the shed, but I think she meant well. She was trying her heart out, and I still. Whether it was justified or not, I think Jason and Scott are big, intimidating blokes, and I think for them to it did feel like they were ganging up on it. Yeah, okay, they're tight, so of course, but I mean, they should be the bigger men anyway, whether they've got an issue with her or not. The way they sort of approached certain situations. To be honest, after the episode, I was really, really angry at Scott because I think. Just because you've come from an NBA championship side, and I'm a big NBA fan, so I had a lot of respect for him going into this season, and I was kind of, rooting for him a bit. But especially after this episode, I'm like, he was pathetic. He's the biggest douchebag, on Survivor. I just think he obviously doesn't know the game very well from a social point of view, and there were certain things that he said to Alicia he didn't need to say. If he's smart, he just keeps his mouth shut, and I think he's continued that on Twitter since the game, which happened a year ago, and sort of bagged Alicia saying, I hope my daughters never turn out like Alicia and this and that. And then, of course, Alicia's dad got involved. And it's like, Scott, why would you even open your mouth? I don't understand getting into a fight or whatever about this. It's like you voted her out. It's done. The game is over. I mean, why would you even get back on that bandwagon? Like, just be the bigger man, or if you're so professional, just let it go. Like, you don't need to say anything anymore. So apparently, Alicia was telling me that apparently there was a Walmart signing session with Scott Pollard that didn't go very well because a lot of people didn't like the way he bullied people. So that backfired on him. So, it's I don't know. I probably got off track a bit, but I think it's very easy to bully someone if they're not in the numbers for the whole time in their tribe right from the get-go. They might not be the strongest person in your tribe. They might not be the most intelligent or whatever, or the most brawny or whatever. But, I mean, I think you still got to treat people with respect. And they might have thought at the time they were going to come off better on TV than her, but they look like the bigger douchebags, both of them. So, it is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I guess you've used the B word there, which is the thing that's been, passed around a little bit this week, and I'm interested in other people's takes on if they saw this as a situation where Alicia was bullied, and it's always a term I'm a little bit reluctant to use because I'm not sure. Sometimes if somebody's getting a little bit picked on, we can be a bit quick to chuck that in as a term, and all of a sudden we're off on a big tangent that we probably shouldn't be on. But I think there's an interesting situation here, and it was interesting listening to. Again, I'll pump them as well, Cable, so you feel a bit better. The know-it-alls on Rob as a podcast, and Stephen was kind of comparing Alicia a little bit to Sierra from Token Chains, where none of the kind of annoying things that she was doing were really shown, and so she came across as being a bit bullied by everybody else, but she was actually getting on people's nerves all the time. And, it's quite easy to, you get to the point where people they snap, don't they? And they kind of say things. And then it's easy to edit that into a quick show that shows them being really nasty. Look, there's no way I can say that what happened with Scott and Jason there was, that they were really justified, because I haven't seen enough of the raw footage to know what was really happening there. And I think there's definitely a little bit of fault on both sides for sure. We'll go to Jordan. I mean, what was your take on that whole situation? Did you feel there was a kind of a bullying element to that? Do you feel that Alicia kind of had it coming? What was your take on everything that happened there?
Well, the way they presented it to us, it was bullying. Like you mentioned before with Sierra and Token Chains, they didn't show on the TV show the annoying things that she was doing. Maybe Alicia was doing the same sort of things, but the way they're presenting it to us, it was bullying. And Scott, being 7 foot tall or whatever, 6'10", towering over Alicia, who's probably like 5 feet 3, 4, 5 inches or so, or less, and him just standing over her and telling her, well, I played with championship players on a championship team, and and that's not the thing that even an average Survivor player says, and as let alone a Survivor who has a chance to win. So Scott is really at fault, and Jason, I don't remember too much of the editor showing to us him being mean to Alicia to her face. They really underscored it in confessionals, though. And I think there was one thing they left out, and Alicia mentioned it in her exit interview, which was she stood up for herself more. I don't know if that got on other people's nerves, but yeah, I think my overall thoughts are it's being presented as bullying, and that's not a good sign for Jason and Scott as to their chances of winning this game. And if Scott is taking heat from it on social media and in public, like, that's his fault.
Yeah, and I think that's quite an interesting point that you've both raised around that. This isn't just, it's not completely contained within the game, because Scott seems to have been saying the same thing, kind of on social media as well, which kind of you lose a little bit of the good moral ground when you start doing it outside of the game as well. So, it's going to be interesting to see how this affects them going forwards. I'll go to Alec and get his takes on this as well, because I'm really interested in what people think about this. It's an interesting situation. I think, from my perspective, I think Alicia's actually had a lot of good moments and a lot of bad moments. If you go back to, a couple of episodes ago where she's building the fire and spending hours and hours, and she's not going to give up, and we really got that side of her as well. So we have had a lot of positive as well as negative for her. So I think she's had a reasonably balanced edit for somebody that's gone so early. But, Alec, what are your thoughts around the whole thing?
My thoughts with the whole bullying aspect. Bullying, at least on the show, Shireen on Worlds Apart was bullied. She was just attacked for no reason at all. Like, she never fought back or anything like that. Alicia was egging it on. Like, Scott gave a pretty decent explanation or whatever. Like, oh, I didn't mean it like, hey, just be a cheerleader, go cheer on the sidelines. He's like, I was saying, hey, keep us motivated. Like, we're digging and stuff like that. It's like, and we needed the extra motivation and stuff like that. And she's just like, well, that's not what I meant. Like she was kind of attacking him for giving a decent explanation. I'm not saying that's exactly what he was saying. He probably did mean it like, just go cheer on the sidelines, because you're pretty good at that. But I feel that she egged it on a lot more than it had to be. Like, she egged it on so much so that Jason had to like go walk away from everybody because he was getting so pissed off at just something she was doing. Like, he didn't really say much. It was more Scott than him. But it's like he got so upset about what she was doing because of it. And I feel that's the reason why it's not as much of a bullying aspect as a Shirin like moment, And so I feel it's like you were saying, Nick, that it's that it is both sides of the stories. Like, I like Alicia. I feel she's definitely had a really, really good edit. Like, she's been seen as this underdog who had great moments and then just kept falling. Like, she was starting, like, especially after the Jenny vote out, she was like, yeah, I'm like, if I can find this idol, I'm set for a while or whatever. Then she can't find the idol and she's down. She started the fire and then, like, she's down again. But then Jenny gets voted out. She's had this up and down roller coaster, and I feel she's a great character. I call her this season's much more tolerable Jatia. Just that person that, like, never seems to go home until, like, 100% that they're basically going home. It's like, I feel it was both sides. I do agree that Scott was being very condescending and stuff like that. But I feel that Alicia egged those comments out of him more than him just bringing them out. Because you've seen throughout the whole season that Scott and Jason kind of had their side conversations when they're talking about her, like saying a couple mean things here and there and stuff like that. And Jenny didn't like it and stuff. It's like, you've seen that side of them, but like Alicia egged that out of him to say it to her face. And I feel he was a little bit of a bully, but I don't feel it was 100% of him just attacking her for no reason at all, because she brought it upon herself in some ways.
Right, and I think it's some things that I'm picking up on there as well is some interesting comments that I kind of heard throughout the episode. I think Jason's comment around, we're not going to make that same mistake again, implying that they kept her around longer than they probably should have, which I think is quite telling of the whole situation. I think I'm probably going to have to just jump back to, because I'm sure Cable's going to have a few thoughts here. So I'll let him close that out, and then I've got one final thought about this whole thing, which might kind of encapsulate it. So Cable, do you want to give us a quick retort, because I'm sure you probably got one there around the Shireen comparison?
Yeah, I do, because I think they're still quite different situations, Shireen. Again, it's hard for us as fans if we don't know the whole backstories and the edits and what Stephen Fishback would say is not canon with the secret scenes or interviews. I think some of the stuff Will said in Worlds Apart was not justified, but I understand he felt attacked first and he just got on his soapbox and he didn't necessarily go out of his way to attack Shireen and pick on her and all that sort of stuff until he felt attacked or he was defending himself. I think Alicia right from the get-go was whether she was good or useless or whatever in that tribe, I don't think she was ever given a fair opportunity. And I think the Scott stuff disappointed me because, again, he's come from the NBA where you play with a lot of players. You might not love them as people, but they bring certain elements to your team. You all got to get along. You got to gel. There's got to be chemistry. And I think for him to kind of attack her and be condescending, I actually disagree with Alec. You're saying that Alicia was egging it on. Okay, she was digging her own grave to a point because she was bringing it out of them. But she was justified in saying, I felt like you were condescending, you were attacking me, I'm trying to pump us up and be supportive of our tribe, and you're having a go at me. And it was true. She was justified in saying that because they were being condescending, they were talking her down, they were treating her like shit. And was she supposed to shut her mouth and not say anything? And she's clearly one of those people that will defend herself and wants to speak her mind, and I think she was justified in doing that. And then even when, I just rewatched it, 45 minutes ago, and she was saying to Scott about, you're saying I'm a cheerleader, blah, blah. Yeah, she didn't let it go. And if you look at it the first time, you go, oh, well, they're probably right. She just kept going on and on about it. So, Jason got out of the shelter, rah, rah. But the reality of that is that Scott was just giving her bullshit answers. He actually lied straight to her face, and he looked like you could tell he was lying. Like he was just being a condescending prick, and that's the thing. So, look, I know, I agree. I kind of understand what you're saying, Alec, but I have to disagree. I think there's probably a lot off screen that she's annoying as fuck, and I can understand probably why they probably snapped. But I think in that situation, she just went straight up to him saying, "I'm trying to be team player. I'm trying to be supportive. Why, blah, blah, blah." And he's like, oh, yeah. And he just gave her a crap excuse. He wasn't even confronting the situation until later when he had Jason next to him. And I don't know. I just think that's a bit piss weak as well. I think, he should have been honest with her straight from the get-go and said, this is how I feel. I didn't like you cheerleading. I didn't like you kicking the sand or whatever it was. He should have just said it. It felt like he said it. They're in a one-on-one. And then all of a sudden when he was with Jason and they're both either side of her, then he wants to attack her a bit more because he's got the support of Jason. I just think that's pretty crap, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I agree about that. He was given a BS answer. Like, it's obvious that he was giving her a BS answer, and she knew it and stuff. And like, he did say very condescending things. I'm not justifying Scott in anything that he said. Like, just like I'm not justifying Will and anything he said about Shireen, even though he got piped up, It's just like, I'm not justifying anything that Scott said. It was just that, like, she wouldn't, like, one of the big things I've learned to, like, stop confrontation is, like, if he gives you an answer, whatever, just say, like, well, I thought it was like this, like, maybe talking more down with it, and she was, like, kind of, she wanted the argument, is what it was. And, like, I feel that's the reason why it was. And then when Jason came over, that's when Scott did get a lot more condescending and stuff. And so I agree that it wasn't justified at all, but it wasn't 100% Scott doing it just because he wanted to do it,
Yeah.
Certainly lots of interesting stuff to unpack there, but I think if I'm just going to bring this all to a close, I think one of the things that's kind of been forgotten about this whole thing is that there's actually a fourth member on that tribe. Her name's Sydney, and she's managed to keep out of all of this drama and do basically exactly what Alec is talking about of, probably given her point of view, listening to Alicia and then make a decision that she has to do to go forward in the game. So, I think Sydney's playing a really kind of underrated and really good game without getting into any of that personal stuff. And I think regardless of how you feel about Alicia or Scott and Jason, is that they're all trading, some pretty nasty insults with each other, which doesn't help anyone's game, to be honest. And Sydney's smart enough to sit back and actually not be a part of that, but still play the game that she needs to move forward. So, it is really interesting to think about how that's all going to unfold now that we're moving into a tribe swap. So I think we can probably wrap this up a little bit now. And I think, I'll just start by going around and asking everybody where you think the show's at after 4 episodes. We talked a little bit about it, but it'd be interesting to get your take on, what you're thinking so far. I'll probably start with Jordan because he hasn't said too much so far. It's been a bit of an argument, well, not an argument, but a discussion between the other two. So I'll let Jordan jump in here.
Yeah, Cable said it earlier that he said that the season's been amazing so far, and I have to agree. I would say 3 of the first 4 episodes were amazing. I didn't like last week's episode too much with all the idol hunting, and although seeing the brains go to tribal for the first time was good. But other than that, I really didn't like it. But other than the first, other than that part of the 3rd episode, the idol hunting stuff, this season's been amazing so far. And even that was pretty dramatic. The idol, like the Braun stuff. But a lot of funny moments so far, especially in episode 2 with Ty and Caleb, and I'm gonna forget a ton of things, but there were a lot of funny stuff in that episode with Jenny getting on the stool and bunch of other Debbie with her antics and stuff. But yeah, amazing characters so far. Just about at least like 5 or 6 great characters. A couple of invisible people. Like, I still really don't know the girls on the beauty tribe, other than maybe Anna's strategic game so far. I really haven't gotten to know them. I'm pretty sure the beauty's gotten the least airtime. Everyone else, I think, we have seen enough of, other than my pony, which is Aubrey, who I don't know why, but I like. Yeah, just overall, I really like this season. Hopefully, it'll continue to, I guess, surprise us, because Jeff is. Yeah, I just saw that Jeff is not high on the season. Hopefully, we'll keep getting surprises along the way, and hopefully not too many more medevacs. I would hope. Like from the preview, like it's supposed to be it is the hardest season of all time, but we only saw one time Jeff saying we're having an evacuation. So, Caleb, that might be the only medevac. We're probably going to see more people, get injured or, go down like Debbie did. But I really hope that we can continue to be surprised. And like I said, the first 4 or so episodes have been amazing so far. And can't wait to see how it turns out. And I think, I guess I should bring up like the twist next week, or switch up with 13 people. Some people are saying 6 and 7 tribe split, which I guess is probably that's probably what they're going to do, unless there's a merge, which I don't think it'll happen because it's only episode 5. But we'll see what happens. I think a lot of people can still win. I think a lot of people can't win, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. I can't wait to see it play out.
Yeah, and you actually bring up a couple of things that I wanted to hit on as well, is that you and me are both in the same boat, that our pony in the Survivor Oz sweep is getting absolutely no airtime, because I've got Julia and I've hardly seen anything of her, so I know how you feel there. And if I'm looking at the two people who I think have left that this week, though, it looks like Alex Morella and is it Patty G have both dropped out with their ponies. So I'm sorry, guys, that's how it goes. So, Cable, what are your thoughts on the season so far, other than what you've said? Was anything else you wanted to add to that?
No, I guess I'm pretty excited to see how it all plays out. I guess on our little chat, there's a bit of confusion. I thought there was 3 medical evacs, whether that means 3 medical emergency, which just happened in the episode just gone, or whether 2 other people get evacuated. I'm going to go and say I think there's still another 2 more to come. I think someone does get some sort of infection from a cut. I believe from the last preview from the Cambodia reunion. So it can screw up someone's game pretty quickly. Like someone can be in the box seat and a medical evacuation can hurt a team. And I think Caleb leaving the Beauty Tribe does hurt them going forward, especially with the 3 girls potentially siding with him. It changes the dynamic there, but we're going to see a switch next week anyway. So, the only other thing I was going to touch on that we never really touched on was the actual location. I think it's pretty famous for being, Kaoh Rong having a French player who probably had a similar build to Caleb actually died on the 3rd or 4th day in a challenge. So you sort of got to wonder whether, Cambodia or Kaoh Rong's got a bit of a jinx or maybe it's just the humidity and the heat. And that time of the year is not a great time to be playing Survivor. But, it's going to be interesting going forward. Even like we know Survivor, just from a cost-cutting point of view, that they do go back to the well with some locations. So whether they ever go back to Cambodia, I don't see that happening. But it'll be interesting whether that's something they take into account, that it's hard for everybody, not just the players, but the cast and crew, and I think Jeff made a comment in the challenge where he said he was even hot watching them do the challenge. So, I think it's interesting, firstly, that the American version, who normally are the trendsetters, obviously, and lead the way, and a lot of the international versions piggyback on top of the CBS version. And this was the first time I think the American version went to a location that international versions had been to first, so maybe that was why they'd never been there, because it had issues. But I can't imagine them going back to Cambodia anytime soon.
No, you wouldn't think so. But having said that, all of that, it's interesting that, spoiler alert for anyone that doesn't know where the next season is, that they've just had a massive cyclone rip through that part of the world as well. So I guess nowhere's safe. But in terms of the actual, the physical conditions of dealing with that, it is a bit of an interesting thing to think about. And I guess one thing we're going to be able to look at to know just how hot it is in Cambodia going forwards is if Jeff starts wearing a few more black shirts so you can't see his armpits sweating, you probably know it's pretty hot out there. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. How many black shirts is Jeff wearing going forward so we can't see that nasty pit sweat happening? Is that a nice thought to have in mind, guys? So I think that is... Alec, I think we haven't got any thoughts from you on the season overall and where we're going. So hit us with it.
I really like this season. I feel so far we have 13 people left. I feel we have 4 standout characters already. Like characters that will be remembered with Ty, Scott, Jason, and Debbie. Like they're just like above and beyond the rest. And then we have at least 3 that are like have great potential for being great characters. And Anna, Peter, and Sydney. I feel those 3 have great potential, as well as the others. Like, Nick has shown some promise. Michelle and Julia, we barely know who they are. But, like, Neil, Aubrey, even Joe, like, the 71-year-old is still up there, It's a really great cast. I wouldn't say it's the best cast we've had in a while, because I think Kaoh was a little bit better than this one. But this one's probably the best cast since Kaoh, not counting the returning player season, obviously. And so it's like this season, it's already got off to a good start. I do agree that 3 out of the 4 first episodes were really, really good. I thought this episode would have been by far like the best episode ever if all of a sudden there was a swerve and Alicia didn't go home and like Scott did just for no reason at all. That would have been like the like red herring of them all. But yeah, it's like so far 3 out of the first 4 episodes have been really, really great, and that even that 4th episode has been really, really good. Like, you know, and so it's a great start to a season. I'm hoping that the rest of the season stays this amazing. I'm hoping that, like, you know, the merge isn't lackluster, like, you know, South Pacific or something like that, like really good pre-merge and then lackluster post-merge and something like that. It's like, I'm really hoping that the merge still brings us great and new exciting things. And so, yeah. And yes, Kate, I agree with you on that.
I totally agree on the cast, that they're a really great cast, and I think Jeff's really undersold just how cool this cast is. And Jordan, I'm going to jump in and agree with you that for some reason I really like Aubrey. What it is about Aubrey that I really like, I don't know, but she just seems like a lot of fun on the show. I'm enjoying watching her. She's somebody a little bit different from what you normally see, so really cool to have her on the show. Now I've said that, you can guarantee she'll probably be voted out next. That's probably normally how these things kind of go. It is really good that we've had this really strong start to the season, because sometimes these first few episodes can be the hardest to get into, the ones that are furthest from the end. So it's great that we've kind of started off with such a bang. But having said that, I remember after 4 episodes of Redemption Island thinking this is going to be one hell of a season, and then it just all went tits up from then on out. So hopefully that's not the case. We might just do a quick round the table, just a yes or no answer. Do you think Alicia will ever be asked to play Survivor again? Cable, what's your take?
I hope she is, but I can understand if she's not. And I know you just want a yes or no, but I think even, I might be misreading Jeff, but even Jeff kind of saying it tribal, I really want the underdog story, blah, blah, blah. I can kind of see her maybe getting invited back.
Yeah, you never know. They come up with some weird concepts, so there might be a place for her somewhere. Alec, what are your thoughts on that one?
She probably has about as much chance of coming back as Jutia did, and Jeff wants Jutia back, so I definitely think that she has the potential to come back. She might be like a Monica Culpepper, you know, just pre-merge that comes back and does really well the second time, you know?
Yeah, you never know. Jordan, what do you think?
Alicia coming back, I think that's a tough one, because there are so many other characters from this season, and Alicia being pre-merge, she might not get as remembered, especially if Ty and Debbie and Jason and all these big characters, you know, and maybe, you know, a couple others, like, if all these characters go far in the game, is Alicia going to get remembered? And if they do some sort of a season where it's pre-merge boots only, or for the most part, that's how I can see Alicia getting in. Otherwise, I really don't like her chances. It's tough because Kelly Wentworth got back on. I don't know if I see Alicia as, well, she's definitely not as good a player as Kelly was. And they went out in the same spot. But Alicia, I don't think so, unless there's like a pre-merge returnee season. That's the only way I think she gets on.
Yep, no, I'd probably agree with that. If she's going to have any chance of coming back, it probably has to be in the next couple of seasons. Otherwise, she's going to be too forgotten as an earlier boot. So, guys, I think we're just going to wrap it.
Yeah, I also wanted to say earlier that I wonder if it's going to be a final 2 this season because of the double exit episode this time and last time in an 18-person season where we had Lindsay quit and then another vote out that same episode. There was a final 2. So I think there might be a final 2, but we'll see.
Oh well, we can only hope.
Yeah.
So we'll finish up with our traditional winners and losers for the week. So this doesn't necessarily have to be from a strategic view. It can be from the character development, whatever you think. Just who your winner and your loser for the week is. So we'll start with you, Cable. Who do you think your winner and loser is from this week?
I still think the loser's probably Pete after last week. I think he thought he was in a good position. I think he's just he's not in a great position. And Deb kind of said that. She sort of stroked his ego, but pretty much said he's on the bottom. And the winner, I think, is Jason. I think he's got an idol. He's playing very aggressively, and he got rid of, or he let pretty much someone that he didn't need around go. So I think he's in a good position.
Yeah, no, good answer. What about you, Alec? What are your thoughts? Winners and losers for the week.
I'm actually going to go different. I'm going to say Peter's the winner this week because he's like talking about how he's at the bottom of this thing, and he has the potential, if his switch comes up, to potentially flip and change his own game, change his own fate. And so I feel that because the switch is going to be coming up, and like it's coming up, that he can potentially change his game coming up. And like I feel that he only had that one small confessional, and then he ended up helping win both challenges for his team. And so so he did position himself as somebody that they would need around for tribe challenges, and he has the potential to change his fate in the game come a switch time. So I feel that was a little bit of foreshadowing, so that's why he's my winner. My loser this week, I would probably say my loser. I'm gonna have to say Ty on this one. I know, I love Ty, but I feel Caleb leaving hurt Ty a little bit because Caleb was probably Ty's closest ally, and like he mentioned about how the idol's more important because the girls have no numbers on his tribe now. Like it's the only confessional Beauty got the whole episode, but it's like I feel that Ty. I still feel Ty is going a long way in this game, but he has to rethink his strategy a little bit because Caleb left. So.
Yeah, good answers there. It's definitely going to change Ty's game, that's for sure. He's going to have a little bit of a rethink, and his story is one of the ones I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens if we, or after we get to the swap. That's one I'm not really sure how it's going to go. So, and I also would agree about Peter. I think he's such a challenge beast that this was a really good turnaround for him, no doubt about that. So, Jordan, do you want to round us out? Who are your winners and losers for the week?
It's tough because we really don't have a lot to go on. I'm going to say Debbie is the winner this week. I just like to go by edit and not necessarily the gameplay all the time. And there was very little gameplay in this episode. But Debbie, we saw a new dimension to her character this week in that she goes, we start off with her being happy about the vote. And then after the challenge, she goes down in the challenge. And after that, we have an emotional confessional from her about her daughters saying that they're proud of her. And that's, we're just seeing this new side to her. And that makes her look a lot better. And, previously she was just this goofy, out there character. And now we have a new side to her. And I think my loser is going to be Scott. I think he just, like we said before, like being mean to Alicia for no reason that we saw, but just by the edit, he looked horrible this episode, and they even showed the voting confessional with his parchment saying which is completely unnecessary. So that's my choice is Debbie and Scott.
Yeah, well, I would definitely agree on the second case, and I'll give my answers in just a moment. But it's interesting you touch on Debbie. We haven't talked too much about her, which is interesting given she was one of the three to go down on that challenge. But Debbie's one I still haven't decided what I think about Debbie. I don't know if I like the kind of kooky character that she is or if it's just going to annoy me. I'm still very much up in the air about that. What I will say for Debbie, which I find absolutely amazing, is that she is very, very self-aware. She knows how she's been perceived by other people, and it's that's a real skill that she's got. And when she talks about she's like Coach, well, she's definitely one-up Coach there, because he, certainly in his first season, didn't have any clue as to how other people were thinking about him. So I'm still in the maybe camp about Debbie overall. So she's one that I'll be watching as well going forwards, and there's no doubt she's a bit of a standout character this season. So in terms of my own personal winners and losers for the week, I would definitely agree in terms of losers that I think Scott comes off looking not great after this episode. And while you can probably say the same for Jason, at least Jason has the idol, whereas Scott's kind of got no protection. I think he's been set up as somebody that could be, about to have a fall. So that wouldn't surprise me.
I didn't want to too much. I was just going to say that I kind of see Scott as that person that will look after Jason, but I think Jason's going to cut his throat at some point.
Yeah. There's been a few lines on the show that kind of make me think that might be happening as well. So, not a good week for him, I don't think, even though he came out on the right side of the vote. And in terms of winners, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm not going to give it to a player, but I am going to give it to Dr. Joe. I think, this is exceptional circumstances. I wouldn't normally single out somebody who's not a player, but you really have to take your hat off to how he and his whole team dealt with that situation. So he's definitely my winner for the week. So that's going to finish us up here for this episode. I'd just like to say thanks to all three of you. Thanks, Cable, for joining us. Really appreciate that.
No, I appreciate you having me, and I actually like just a different accent on my host every now and then.
We won't make it a permanent feature because we won't be able to call it Survivor Oz if we do that, even if we do change our flag. Thanks, Jordan, for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry if I rambled on too much at any point. But
No, it was great. All really good insights from everybody, and thanks to you as well, Alec.
No problem. It's nice to actually talk to you for once. So.
Yeah. So I'd say look for us on iTunes for all our podcasts. We put out a number of podcasts each week. Going through the shows, and make sure you check them out. But I'd also say, as somebody that you probably don't hear a lot of, you probably would see a lot more of me if you go to the website and read some of our articles, because that's where you'll kind of see me. I do a lot of the writing for the show. And so if you want to get a bit of a deep dig into anything, there's a lot of really cool articles coming out from all our writers on the show. So, go and have a look on the website as well, and have a look at some of those feature articles in Top 10, because there's some really fascinating articles coming out, and really well written, brilliant thoughts from everybody. So, make sure you check them out too. So with that, I'll say thank you very much. And what's the famous line? We'll see you on the trains, or whatever the hell it is.
Nah, don't use that one. That's old.
We'll see you on the sheet. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. See you next time.